In this lecture, we're going to explore the coroutine workflow in terms of function call stacks. So here we have a bunch of functions we're going to use as an example. We have func1, func2, func3. Func1 is not calling any other function, but func2 is going to call func1 as we see here, and func3 is going to call func2. And in our main function, we're going to call func3, which is going to trigger a chain of function calls here. So func3 is going to call func2, func3 is going to call func1, and we're going to see all this function called on our call stack. When we do something like this, we will have a situation like this. At the start, the main function is going to be to the top of the stack, so we will have a situation like this. Then the main function is going to call func3. Func3 is going to be to the top of the call stack. Func3 is going to call func2. We're going to have a situation like this. So func2 is going to be to the top. Func2 is going to call func1, and func1 is going to be to the top of the stack. Then we're going to start stack unwinding because func1 is not going to call any other function. So func1 is going to run up until the end, and it is going to be popped off the stack. Func2 is going to be to the top. It is going to run all the way to the end, and it is going to be popped off the stack. Then func3 is going to be to the top. It is going to run all the way to the end, and it is going to be popped off the stack. We will hit the main function, and the main function will run to completion, and our program is going to end. This is the situation we have with the function calls we have in this example here. Again, func3 is going to call func2, func2 is going to call func1, func1 is going to run all the way to the end, and then we will start stack unwinding and pop off all the other functions until we come back to the main function, and then the main function is going to run to completion as we see right here. Hopefully this is not confusing. Now let's see how this works if we introduce the pausing and resuming that we have in C++ 20 coroutines. Now suppose we have a suspension point in func2 here. So when execution hits this point, our function will freeze and F2 is going to be popped off the call stack, and we will come back to func3, which is going to be popped off the call stack, and then we will hit the main function. But in this case, suppose that the main function is not going to finish immediately. Suppose that we have something looping around, waiting for any other paused functions to come back and run to completion. So we're going to have a situation like this. At the start, we will start from the main function. The main function is going to call func3. We will have a situation like this. Func3 is going to call func2, and func2 is going to be to the top of our stack. This is the situation we will have here. Then func2 is going to hit the pause point. We will freeze execution, so we will pause and store our function state. In our function state that we store somewhere on the heap, typically, we will have the local variables stored. We will have the parameters stalled, and we will have the point where we will resume execution from when we resume this function and get it to run again. But another piece of information is a handle to this computation that we will use to resume this function if we happen to need that in our C++ program. So when F2 pauses, it is going to freeze and it is going to be popped off the call stack, but we will keep this handle somewhere in our C++ program. And as we progress, I am going to show you ways we have in C++ 20 to get a handle on this computation here. F2 is going to be popped off the call stack. F3 is going to be to the top. F3 is going to run to completion. We will hit the main function, and the main function is not going to end. It is going to keep waiting for our post function to come back later in our C++ program. So suppose that this function is resumed somehow. So we will resume func2. We will come to the main function, which has only the main function to the call stack. And then we're going to restore the function2 state. And we will use our handle here to resume this function. And it is going to come back to this point where it was resumed, and we will execute whatever is after this point here. Now, if you go back to the previous slide, you're going to see that func2 was about to call func1. So it is going to call func1, and func1 is going to be to the top of the call stack. Func1 is going to run all the way to the end, and it is going to be popped off the call stack. F2 is going to be to the top, F2 is going to run all the way to the end, and it is going to be popped off the call stack. We will hit the main function, and our program will run all the way to the end. And this is the pausing and resuming workflow I really want you to keep straight in your mind. If you pause the function, execution is going to freeze at that point, and it is going to freeze at your suspension point. If we go back, we're going to find our suspension point here. If this is not clear, if we hit it, we're going to store the execution information of this function somewhere on the heap, and we will keep a handle to this information so that we can resume this function later if we happen to need that. Now, once we suspend, this function is going to freeze. It is going to be popped off the call stack. So whoever called func2 is going to be activated, and that's going to be func3, and it is going to run all the way to the end. And we're going to hit the main function, and our program is going to keep waiting. And when we resume func2, it is going to run from this point here. So it is going to run func1, then func2 is going to run, and then we're going to come back in the main function as we just described in these slides here. I want you to keep this straight in your mind. Hopefully this is not confusing, and up until this moment, we don't really have a way to test these things out, but don't worry, I will show you a way to do that. And before we actually get to try these things, we need to learn about the keywords that C++20 provides to be able to pause and resume in our coroutines. And we're going to learn about them in the next lecture. So go ahead and finish up here and meet me there.